NEWS.MC on Monaco Info is brought to you by Monaco Legend Properties. Our exclusive interview with the personalities making the Principality.
My name is Didier de Cottignies. I'm Délégué Artistique of the Orchestre Philharmonic de Monte-Carlo. I was born in Morocco, out of all places, in the south of Morocco, which is quite unexpected, but my parents were living at the time in Agadir. I lived the first year of my life there, and then my father, for business, we went to America. And then suddenly, from the south of Morocco, I ended up living in Chicago, which was a major cultural change, as you can imagine. And I lived 5 years in Chicago, and then enjoyed myself a lot. I mean, for me, the American life was quite sort of dazzling for somebody who had only seen, even though I was quite young, southern Morocco was not exactly the same thing. My father put us back in France, and I came to live in Cannes. And then from there I went to Paris to enter the Institute of Political Sciences in Paris, Rue Saint-Guillaume. And then I stayed 30 years in London after that, where I suddenly went for my first love, which was music, because I was always fanatic of classical music. Suddenly I started working in a record company, in a small record company. And basically I ended up being the exporter from London, privileged exporter of Decca record for more than a year. And they were actually, in those days, they were like 3 recordings which were selling like hotcakes, and also the new Rolling Stones record was also coming out at the time. So you can imagine as well that all the FNAC had wanted to have it. So basically with just 2 titles, I started making, and suddenly they gave me a commission on the thing. I never earned so much money in my whole life. And then I ended up being an executive in a major record company, international. So that was what happened in London, and I stayed with them 28 years exactly, to be precise. I decided I would never go back to France, okay? And in 2001, when I was really fed up with the record business because it was going to a direction I started hating, and it took me 1 year to take the decision, but I didn't know what to do when I was starting looking, and I said I would love to look after or in an opera house or in a symphony orchestra. And then suddenly, out of all places, somebody from France contacted me through an artist, Maria João Pires, very famous Portuguese pianist, who knew the director of the French radio, who was looking for somebody to run the Orchestre National de France, and he couldn't find anybody to his liking, to whom to entrust with that work. I did a really good job, I think, at the Orchestre National, and in the meantime, the offer to come to Monaco come up from Kazuki Yamada, and then Kazuki convinced me. I said, Monaco? I said, are you joking? And then I said, why not? And then in fact I realized that Monaco is a good orchestra, is alone, no, not all the Paris marigot, as I say, you know, which is like everybody fighting to have this conductor, to have this pianist, this violinist. Monaco, there is one orchestra, one place, nobody around 300 kilometers around. You can hire who you want without displeasing somebody here and there. And I said, oh God, that sounds quite an easy, nice position to be in. And I know, because I saw the orchestra was very good, that the job that Kazuki is a very good conductor, but I mean, his command of French was near to zero, and the command of English was rather basic, and it was a communication problem, definitely, in between Kazuki Yamada and the orchestra, and sometimes a lot of misunderstanding. This was the first problem, so I said I'm going to remedy to this. So, and in the end, because that was the first important thing to do, was to actually show to the musician that the aspirations of the music director was actually very good for them. So in the end, we built up an artistic policy for the orchestra, which sort of gave a certain direction to the orchestra, improved the motivation of the orchestra as well. And frankly, I think the orchestra I met when I arrived and the orchestra today, I'm really proud of the results. I know if somebody is good, somebody is not good. And the conductors, I think I've got quite a good eye after all these years doing this to know if the conductor is a charlatan or whether he's a genius, you know what I mean? And then sometimes you hear what he produces, the way he also rehearses, and there are many ways of judging the work of a conductor, but sometimes there are a lot of charlatans around that still are doing good careers, and that some of my colleagues do not see. They are charlatans, to my mind, but sometimes they say, I am wrong. I mean, this opera house is a jewel. It's like a gift. Because, I mean, you get but the only problem it has is it doesn't take more than 510 or whatever inside, which is amazing. It's like being in your salon at home and listening to music, because the acoustically is absolutely impeccable. And to hear a piano recitals there, I'm let alone an opera, but to hear a piano recital or a chamber music concert with a string quartet and piano and all this, it's a magnificent place to be able to have this. And a piano recital is also a gift. We are extremely lucky because we have got this opera house here, but we have got the Grimaldi Forum, which enables us to do much bigger size opera productions. We have got the Auditorium Régnier 3, which is a very good auditorium. Unfortunately, you cannot play there things which are like a request well over 100 musicians, because then you get a headache. But I mean, if you know how far you can go in the repertoire you want to play in Régnier 3, it's a very good hall too. It's not the most beautiful hall inside, but acoustically it's got a very good acoustic. And it's a very analytical acoustic, which enables the musicians in the orchestra to hear themselves, which is more than some other halls in Paris or whatever do not have. And then therefore they can cultivate the sound of the orchestra, and this is also extremely important. So when you do a Mozart symphony, a Haydn symphony, a Schumann symphony, a Beethoven, I mean, the Auditorium Régnier 3 is a perfect hall to do that. You see, there is a lot of cards in the hands of the people who make music here with these three halls. I mean, sometimes it's difficult to get them because everybody's fighting to have the use of this hall, not the concert hall, not the Régnier 3, where it is the natural house for the orchestra. You know, you need the Grimaldi Forum because the volume of sound produced for these symphonies is far too big for the size of the Régnier 3. My grandparents, when the Morocco went independent, they sold everything and they appeared here. They lived in Monaco. They moved from Morocco to Monaco. They bought a place in an apartment building, which was the first skyscraper in Monaco, believe it or not, at the top of Monaco, and it was the only one at the time that my grandfather bought the apartment there. And we went to the concerts here. Is how I discovered the concerts here and the recitals at the Garnier. I discovered symphonic music, real symphonic music, there, because I had been to concerts also in other places, you know, in Cannes and then even in Chicago. I mean, my first concert I heard in Chicago, I mean, it's just like amazing. I heard the legendary Fritz Reiner when I was 6 years old, you know what I mean? Nobody can believe this, but it's quite incredible that I was able to do so. But I mean, I have a very faint souvenir, but still quite impressed. But my grandmother took me also to Aix-en-Provence Festival. She knew quite a lot of people. So basically, but she was the one who connected me with the musical life here. And in those days, Prince Rainier, for example, was coming to all the things. I remember seeing him, you know, and he enjoyed this concert very much as well himself. I think the orchestra at the moment is getting rejuvenated because there are a lot of people, since I've been here, who have taken retirement, and I think there are still some more on the verge of retiring. So basically the influx of younger musicians is actually quite, and now I think the balance makes it actually a rather young orchestra. So it's quite heartwarming. Music will never be ignored, I think. I mean, from time it's got his high and his lows, but I mean, you know, frankly, it's always come back in circle, you know what I mean, and it's there, you know. I think music has still got a future, you see what I mean, and it's just a question of how to offer it to people. But I think what Monaco is doing and the offer that Monaco gives is actually fantastic. What we have now is to try to bring younger people, which they do, because it's really funny. In Monaco, you see the Russian community, they bring their children, which they sit down and say, you are going to hear Grigory Sokolov play, and the children are being taught how to listen to this. Myself, I always trust that you can be touched by music at any time. Listen to Lévi-Strauss, you know, Claude Lévi-Strauss experiments in Brazil, you know what I mean, playing them Mozart, and they were crying listening to it. I mean, he did these experiments, and like what Dr. Schweizer did when he played the organ in Lambaréné, you know, playing Bach to local people, and they were all sitting around him listening to and being so moved. So you see, when I was back at the National, is the time that Notre Dame burned. And basically, I got involved with Orchestre National de France. We got involved to do a fundraising concert. The best thing I had was the next morning at my local cafe. There is a Sri Lankan barman. who serves me every morning when I'm in Paris. And he said to me, "Oh, did you have something to do with the concert last night? Because we had it on the television." He said, "Last night we put the concert in the cafe and everybody watched it." He said, "Can you tell me what you played at the end? Because it was this wonderful chorus. Everybody was crying. It was so beautiful." I said, "What this is?" He said, "Can you write it down? Can I get the CD of this?" I said, "Yes, of course." And it was the final chorus of the St. Matthew Passion. The guy had never heard classical music. He said, "Can you tell me what it was? Because I would love to listen to it again." And I called the people at the TV, say, "You see that? The guy, Sri Lankan, never heard any classical music, or things like that. He heard it because they had it in the cafe yesterday because they thought it was nice to put that because it was for Notre Dame, and all the people who were in the cafe watched it." It's the two choruses of the St. Matthew Passion got the biggest audience, and they were undisturbed. Monaco is a very agreeable place to work in this kind of job, and I think Monaco is spending a lot of money on culture, which is amazing, and I think it's probably one of the greatest exports of Monaco in the end, which gives also a testament or testimony of what excellence is. But I mean, you have the ballet, which is spectacularly good. You have the opera, who gives very high-level performances and very high-level results, with Mrs. Bartoli, who is now here. And what we have done with Kazuki Yamada is also very, very good. Now we are more and more in demand. I mean, when we arrived, the number of concerts in tour were diminished, and with the COVID, it's diminished to zero. And then we have to rebuild the reputation of the orchestra to also go on tour, and it's more and more difficult because to get now the organization who are willing to put the money necessary to invite an orchestra is not as easy as it used to be 10, 12, 20 years ago. So you need to be really convincing to do so. But slowly, we are recuperating, the place that was ours before, and even more, and in more prestigious places as well. And basically is what we are working towards. In my job, what I like is the vicinity with the artist, because, I work for two major orchestras in Paris, international, orchestras, like Orchestre de Paris, Orchestre National. But the musicians I invite, I couldn't spend as much time as I spend with them here. It's much easier here, because when they are here, they have nothing much else to do. So you can spend time with them having dinner and discussions, and also get them attracted by the place and making them feel comfortable, like at home, like it's a family, you know what I mean, and things like that. There is a real human aspect to the way you deal with the artists, which make them want to come back, even if it's not the most important, place for them to play, because sometimes a lot of them ignore Monaco because they say, "I don't have time to go there," or whatever. Some of them are quite snobby about this, Monaco is not for me, I've passed the age of doing this. But I mean, now I've been able to recuperate some of the very important people. I mean, Riccardo Muti came last year and he wants to come back. People, big names in the conducting world, who have been seduced by the orchestra and things like that, and seduced by the way we do things. In Paris, you have to cross half of the city, the quality of everything is better here. And this is at every level. This is the benefit that you can have in Monaco, and is the benefit that you give people who come here. And also the quality of the public is actually also to be reckoned with. 2 days ago, we had a very important pianist, Grigory Sokolov, who is really one of the top 5 pianists today. He said he's always stunned by the quality of listening. He said, "I know here," he said to me, "that people are really profoundly listening. I hear the attentiveness of the public, and this is amazingly heartwarming because I hear this magnet coming, and I say, this is totally silent, you don't know, and then you feel like you have to give more, and give your really best. You see it's getting somewhere." And he described that very well to me, I was really impressed what he said.
That's all for today. Thank you for watching NEWS.MC, your English rendezvous on Monaco Info. Discover more interviews and stories on our websites, NEWS.MC and MonacoInfo.com. This show was brought to you by Monaco Legend Properties.